Welcome everyone to All Tea No Sugar. My name is Bryan. My pronouns are she, her, they, them, and I'm a youth leader at Sisters and Brothers United. And today we have amazing co-hosts, so would you guys please introduce yourselves?
Hello everybody, my name is Jordany. My pronouns are he, him.
Hi everyone, my name is Helen and my pronouns are she and her.
Hi, I'm Doug and my pronouns are he and him.
Great. So before we get started, I just want to give the audience a special welcome. So would you guys please give yourself a round of applause? Woo! Great. So All Tea No Sugar is a new YouTube series that was directed and created by the youth in Sisters and Brothers United with the support of the Global Action Project. As a member of Dignity in Schools campaign, which is an intergenerational coalition that works on fighting against the harsh penalties and practices and policies within schools. So today we've gathered here to talk about the racially biased policies and practices within schools, and it's also the week of action. So the coalition demands are, number one, shifting funding from school, police, to counselors, peace builders, and positive discipline. Number two, fund and use transformative and restorative justice, mediation, and positive interventions in schools. Number three, stop the arrests, school removal, and push out Black students and other students of color, LGBTQ youth, students who are homeless, and students with disabilities. Number four, make sure states and districts focus on school climate under the new federal law and Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA for short. Number five, ending paddling and other forms of physical punishment within all schools. And six, invest in public education and divest from privatization and public funding privately running charter schools. So with that being said, let's start off with our first question, which is, what is the current state of school discipline measures and what has led up to the use of these practices in schools?
Well, I think the current state of the school discipline measures are mostly due to racially profiling and misunderstandings between the security guards and the students in schools. The school security guards target mostly Black and dark-skinned Latinx students, and they will randomly check you sometimes to see if there's quote-unquote any weapons on you. Interactions with security and students make it seem like security guards just really don't care about a student's feelings. Yeah. The students are mainly suspended for minor interactions or minor misunderstandings between teachers and security guards.
So again, my name is Helen and I'm a parent organizer at MASA. And so I'm going to be speaking a little bit more from the parent perspective. But it's also, I think that the current state of these policies that are very racially biased has, I think, made so that school climate and school issues are kind of being dealt with at extremes. So what you're talking about, which is being overly punitive, or on the other side of the spectrum where it's complete neglect and just lack of action on anything. So it's you get both sides. Parents are what do we do? My child, I don't know what to do. And then I think that what happens is that there's this victim and perpetrator paradigm that kids and their families are put in, right, when really both both students, both people, both families need a lot of support, and they're the ones who are basically facing all of the issues that schools aren't dealing with appropriately. And I think it also pits families of color against each other. it really is like what you can see, like that divide, like the divisions in our like around like ethnicities and language and like all of these things. So I think that that's what's happening also in like our schools, and that's what the policies are like breeding. Yeah.
I appreciate your work on this campaign, and I think the fact that it's coming from students and that you're really standing up for your rights is really awesome. I'm coming at it from the perspective of a pastor and being in the community, and one of my big concerns is that when minor issues, and it seems that the vast overwhelming majority of issues that are being dealt with by the police are very small infractions that don't really need the enforcement, law enforcement, that it puts it at a different level. When you have an interaction with a police officer, it's not really easy to kind of be in relationship. It's very harsh, it's very clear, it's boom, boom, it's got to be like that. Whereas the most effective ways of dealing with these issues, especially with young people, is relationship. Listening, understanding, understanding what people are dealing with. And so I'm really glad, to see you all standing up for this. And it's definitely very racialized. I mean, I went to a mostly white high school. We didn't have police in our schools. I mean, I think it's, it's very different strategies are used in communities of color in ways that are oppressive, and rather than being, building up community and so really excited that you all are standing up.
I think the current state of school discipline is when, or if students are fighting amongst each other, or even if a student just says no to a higher authority, say for example like a cop or like even a principal, to taking off a hat or like a hairpin, or even if like they have a hijab and it's like a religious thing that they feel like they're comfortable with expressing, they're usually arrested, in which I think that's not really good, especially for our community where or in schools where they say, students or youth are the future. And I think what had led to this was the Columbine massacre in high school, which led to the NYC, or the New York City Department of Education implementing new police and metal detectors within our schools in order to prevent school shootings or prevent any type of like stabbings or anything else that may lead to students getting hurt or injured in the process. Yet I've never heard about New York City having a school shooting, and we're like a very high population of students.
So our next question that we'll be asking today is, what kind of environment or culture do racial bias policies and practices create in schools?
Well, I think that what we see in schools are really like toxic cultures inside of school communities, where families are like kept out. There's like not enough support for like youth voice. Like they're also limiting the engagement of parents and families. They're not having like accountable. They're not accountable to the communities, and I think that it's ultimately created spaces of learning that don't like allow for neither like families to grow in their leadership, like social, emotionally, or academically flourish, and also students, especially who are like the people who they're supposed to be serving, and we've seen what happens, which is like student push out, right? Like and the school to prison pipeline. So that's the culture that we're currently in.
I think the environment that these racial bias policies create in schools is like entering in a jail. And I say this because if students get into a conflict in which they like engage in a fight or whatever, they would receive a different type of penalty as compared, like if the counterpart is white or of different ethnic background. For example, a student that may be Black or African American could get a very high suspension, or they could even get expelled by all means. Meanwhile, if they were fighting within a white counterpart or a person who is not identified as like not LGBTQ, as Latinx or like Black or whatever, or however it may be, they would receive either a slap on the hand or like a 2-day suspension as compared to their Black peers. And I feel like students may feel like they're entering in a prison-like environment, and it doesn't help if the student themselves are like immigrants, because it creates that fear inside them where they feel like the cops are out to get them, and they may not even feel like they should sacrifice themselves for like their education if they feel like they're just gonna get deported back to wherever they came from. And I don't think that's an environment that schools should be creating, especially for students with who come from like a background of where like their family might be immigrants and whatnot.
Well, I think it makes a person feel like they don't belong, and that it makes a student feel like they don't want to come to school anymore because of these racially biased and policies in schools. Students don't feel like they're being heard or by staff or principals or anybody that works at a school. Especially if teachers are targeting them or targeting them. And they're mostly targeted because they speak up on the situation or a problem that's occurring in class or in schools. So they're usually given suspensions or detentions for these minor actions, and it's not right. So Juanita, say something.
It's definitely not right. And I think that, to your point, like there's like no trust. Schools aren't safe. Like families, like I just wanted to add also, that like parents and families enter schools really like timidly, because of just the ways that administrators show up, So, and it's so easy for a parent to also be vilified and demonized by the school. Like there's been parents who've been arrested as well because they've, fought back. And parents are also always afraid that like if they do speak up, not always afraid, but like sometimes there is concern that if they do speak up, and call out, educators or leaders in schools on their inaction, then like their child is probably somebody who's, in their hands and like, it might not be safe. So I think that definitely it's the schools that we've inherited in our neighborhoods, that basically are actually actively discriminatory towards our, communities of color, like Latino, Indigenous, Black families. Like they're like really explicit with these discriminations and like also mistrust them, and it's definitely the environment that everyone's going to school in and having to deal with on a daily basis.